Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of the Redeemed podcast. That's a working title. Not sure if that's what it's going to be. Some of you guys that have already seen me on my YouTube channel. So this is just kind of a continuation of that. So welcome. Glad you're here. So my name is Charlie Harding. I am in long-term recovery. I've been clean and sober for almost 9 years now. In April, it'll be 9 years. So April 27th of 2017 is my clean date. I decided to do this podcast because I've got some stuff, things that I think would be beneficial to other people. Things that I experience, struggles that I go through, being in recovery, also, just the many struggles that I have. I'm a binge eater. Sometimes I struggle with discipline, with exercise. Of course, meetings, balancing work, family, life, church, the whole shebang. So I'm doing this for anybody that can glean something from what I have to say. I think some of my experiences would be beneficial to some people, and even if it just helps one person, that's I think that it's worth it. So today I'm just going to kind of give you pretty much my story, what that looks like. I'm 49 years old. I'm about to be 50. I'll be 50 in February. So like the February 4th. So let's see. So let's just start at the beginning, early life. So I was addicted to meth for 23 years. Of course, that didn't start out that way. I totally lost my train of thought. I got a text message I could see. I grew up in a family with plenty of love. My parents were typical middle class, hard workers. Shown lots and lots of love. And I can remember at an early age feeling like I didn't belong, right? Like I wasn't good enough the way that I was. I remember I was probably 10 years old and was on a bicycle with one of my best friends, and it was a hot summer day in Kansas, which is where I live, where I'm from, where I grew up in Southeast Kansas. And I remember saying, "Man, it's really hot." And he's like, "Why don't you take your shirt off?" And I was like, I didn't want to because I didn't feel comfortable enough to take my shirt off because I thought I was too fat. And so I think my need to be accepted or to be liked, started long before I ever took my first drink or had my first use. So that just kind of followed me around through my childhood. It was always kind of lingering in the back. I was an athlete in school. I was popular. I was well liked. I did well in school up until my senior year. Now, before that, I took my first drink at like 13. I was curious. My dad had a beer, and I come from a long line of substance users as well, on both sides of my family, for quite a ways back. I'm not going to give a bunch of their details because that's for them to tell. But so I had my first drink at 13. I think I got really drunk the first time when I was 15. And then by 16, I was drinking regularly, which meant I was, drinking as often as I could, about every weekend. And that moved on into, when I was 17, I was drinking. I mean, that was the thing to do after Friday night football game, was to go out and get smashed. And even at that time, I was going out and getting drunk, like belligerently drunk, being very promiscuous, driving, staying out late, getting in trouble, your typical things. At least it was typical in my experience, typical for the area I grew up, because everybody was doing that. And so that continued on until I got stoned for the first time and smoked my first bit of marijuana and got high. And I loved it. I thought it was awesome. I love the feeling. And you know what? If that stuff feels that awesome, maybe I should try some of these other drugs. So I started in smoking marijuana my senior year. Smoked marijuana for about a year. I've smoked marijuana for quite a while, but smoked marijuana only and then drank up until 95. And in January 95, I lost my dad. I was going to turn 19 in February. My dad was 41. It was this huge, huge loss in my life. I had no idea how to deal with that kind of grief. I wasn't, no one did. Wasn't offered any kind of grief counseling or anything like that. But this was in 95. I don't think that was as a prevalent thing as it is today. It wasn't as big a deal about people's mental health then. You just sucked it up and got through it, I guess. But anyway, so I started using amphetamines of any kind, cocaine, methamphetamines. I pretty much in that next year, I went really hard in the paint, as they say. I tried every kind of drug that I could get a hold of, mushrooms, acid, mescaline, crack cocaine. I mean, you name it, I did it. I think it's easier to list what I didn't try, and I've never tried heroin or PCP. And in that first year, trying to deal with that pain, after that first year, I thought, you know what, I should probably stop doing this stuff because I might end up getting addicted. And I met my first wife, and we were married for just about a year. And at that point, I just smoked marijuana and drank. Then, let's see, we got divorced. I started hanging out with my friends. And, we pretty much just partied. I was mainly a drinker, but I would do drugs too. So I'd get really drunk, and then I'd want to get yanked out of that drunk by, using methamphetamines or cocaine or whatever I could get a hold of. And that went on for several years. Probably the first half of my active addiction was mainly alcohol. And in that time, I was married once officially. I was common law married to the mother of my kids once. We split up, we got back together. And that, towards the end of that relationship, is really where the meth started to take hold and take over. And I became addicted to meth for sure. I mean, I was addicted to all things, but like all I wanted to do was meth. We started smoking ice out of these pipes. And in my first hit, I knew that I was in trouble. So I went on for probably another 10 years or so, up until that 23-year mark. All kinds of broken relationships, all kinds of, just awful things that I did to people, living my life awful. I was desperate. I was hopeless. I had accepted the fact that I was going to die a using addict, and there was no way out of it. So I'd given up hope. Fortunately, the mother of my children, and my mom and some other people in my life, they all kind of got together and decided that they weren't going to let me live my life the way that I had been living it. And so my mom cut me off. She no longer helped me to facilitate seeing my kids. She no longer helped me with groceries. She stopped enabling me, right? Because if nothing changes, nothing changes. That's what we learn in 12-step. And then the mother of my kids said, you can't see the kids anymore until you go to treatment. And not just go to treatment, you got to prove that you're doing better. And so I go to treatment. I kicked and screamed first. I yelled and I made every excuse in the book because even though I knew that I had given up hope and I didn't want to live that way anymore, I was also desperately afraid um, to change, right? Because I didn't know if life could exist without the use of these drugs. But when she wouldn't give, when she held her ground and stood by her decision, I knew that I didn't have a choice because at least I at least cared about my kids enough to not have them think that their dad didn't care enough about them to at least try. So I went to the local mental health agency and got in touch with a chemical abuse counselor, and we got me into a treatment facility, and I went to treatment. So I went to treatment, and within a couple of weeks, actually within the first couple of days, the first day, they started talking about powerlessness. And I knew that I was an addict, but I didn't really know what addiction meant. I just knew that that meant I couldn't stop. So when they started talking about being powerless against this disease, then it let me understand that I wasn't I wasn't defective. I wasn't it wasn't because I wasn't strong enough, or the thought of my kids wasn't good enough, or all of these things that we tell ourselves, like, how come making my mom upset isn't enough for me to stop? How come, treat my kids like crap, or, sleeping the whole time that they're here, or hiding myself in the bedroom so I could smoke meth? How come none of those things are enough for me to stop? And I just had, like I said, I had given up hope. But I heard about this powerlessness, and I thought, wow, what a concept and what an understanding to say it's not just that you're an addict, it's that you suffer from a disease from which there is no known cure. Um, and the rest of that saying, if you're familiar with 12 steps, says, but it can be arrested at some point and recovery is then possible. And so I reached this point of this aha moment in treatment. We were working our steps, right? And I thought, I'm just going to textbook the shit out of this, right? I'm going to do all the assignments. I'm going to get done with this. I'm going to do 28 days. I'm going to move. I'm going to get away from those people, and I'm going to go back to school, and my life is going to be grand. And I realized that I had more problems than just that. I have what's called life problems, living problems. My counselor told me to put a sticky note on my mirror that said, "You're the problem," because I'm the problem, right? I want it to be everybody else's problem, but it's them that's the problem. It's me that's the problem, not them. It's me that's the problem. Because it's my lack of acceptance of things. It's the fact that I have a disease that on my own I can't do anything about, and that's what that powerless piece really helped me to understand. And so, as I'm trying to answer these questions, and the question was, name 5 ways you robbed, stole, and cheated in your active addiction. And I had been getting like the same kind of answers for most of these questions I had been writing. And I knew enough to know that the answers had to have been different, right? Because I was just trying to bullshit my way through the answers. I was trying to write what I thought they wanted to hear, so I could just get out of here and pass and see my kids again. And when I couldn't figure it out, I went to my counselor and said, here's the things I'm struggling with. And he's like, so he read the question off, named 5 ways you robbed, stole, and cheated in your active addiction. And I said, you could have trusted me. You could have left your dope with me and it would have been there. And he goes, just stop, which was not true. Anyway, I would have pinched that shit. So, but these are the lies that I had taught myself to believe. So I said, you could have left it with, he goes, just stop. And I go, but you could have left your money with me and it all would have been, and he goes, just stop. And I go, but he goes, just stop. And so I finally stopped and listened. And he said, you robbed the opportunity of people to get to know the real you, and you stole quality time from your kids. And that was enough for me to, uh, for the box that I had created for myself, where I was justified, where everything that I believed made me okay and not anybody else's fault, right? It was my fault, and I wasn't hurting anybody. I was only hurting myself, and I don't know why y'all are all on me about this and all up my ass about it. Well, I explain it like this. I don't know if I'm sure you've seen Saving Private Ryan, but if you've seen that movie, if you haven't, check it out. It's a super good movie. Anyway, towards the end, where they're in the bombed out German city and everything around them is rubble, right? Well, the box that I created for myself to look in was the only window and room in that whole city that was still intact, right? Inside, you could see like maybe a piano and pictures on the wall, and it didn't look destroyed because I chose to only look in that window, in this little space where everything was okay. It was still beautiful. Nothing was destroyed. And I couldn't see the outside part. And when he said that to me, when he said, you robbed people from the opportunity to get to know you, real you, and you stole quality time from your kids, that blew that box apart. And so when that box blew apart, my vision expanded to the rubble that was all around that window. And then I was able to recognize the wreckage of my past, as they say. I could see all the damage that I had caused and all the people that I had hurt. And I didn't fully understand the impact of how that affected me. But that was the beginning. That was my aha moment. And I left my counselor, and I thought, man, if I can believe this BS so wholeheartedly that I've fed myself, then I can't trust myself to make the right decisions. And what I need to do is sit down and shut up and listen to what these people are trying to tell me and maybe follow some of these suggestions. And so that was my aha moment. And so after that, I kind of dove head first into my recovery, into 12-step, into the principles of 12-step, into what the program had to offer, and how it could help me, right? Because I knew I needed a fundamental change at the core, because the problem is me, right? It's not everybody else. The problem lies in me. So I worked through treatment. I did 28 days. I got to see my kids before treatment, which was awesome. And I was smart enough to know, gosh, I can't go back to the streets after 28 days. I was terrified, right? I knew I was going to use. I knew it wasn't enough time, and I was scared to death. And so they offered me reintegration in Salina. Shout out to Salina Serenity House. I think it was the 8th Street house that I went to. It solidified my recovery foundation. I went there for 6 months. I committed to the 6-month program, which meant I had to stay. I had to follow all the rules. I had to do 90 meetings in 90 days, which was awesome. Taught me a lot. And I got to build my recovery base. And by building that recovery base, that has helped me to stay diligent in my recovery today, because my recovery is always changing and evolving from moment to moment. And how that looks today. Let me finish. So I go there. I come back to my hometown where I'm from, and I get a job. I start becoming a productive member of society, as they say. I get my own place. I pay my own rent, which was new. I had kind of done that a little bit towards the end of that time, but I wasn't responsible. I didn't pay my bills. And I started rebuilding my life here in my hometown, here where I did all my dirt, here where I did drugs with all the people that I did. And my goal still wasn't to come back here. It was to, go to college, and I was going to become an addictions counselor. But while I was in Salina, God revealed to me that I needed to go home. His exact words were, um, go home. You need to go back home because that is where you can do the most good. So, to back up a little bit, while I was in treatment, they started talking about having a higher power. Now, about 6 years before I got into recovery, Christ, the Holy Spirit, came to me and revealed himself to me. And I'll reveal that in another episode. But I walked away from that experience knowing that without a doubt, God existed. And I didn't have anybody to disciple me. I didn't go to church. I just was in my active addiction, knowing that God was real. And so fast forward in treatment, and they're talking about a higher power and finding out what your higher power is. And I was like, I know what my higher power is. I just don't have a relationship. And they were talking about having a relationship, and they were talking about praying. And I remember I walked away from that group that day, and I went to my room and I shut the door and I hit my knees and I said, Lord, I don't know if this is how you do this, God, but I need help and I need your help. And I've been chasing after Christ ever since, right? I started going to church every time we were able to leave the facility in treatment. On Sundays, we would go to church. When I got to Salina, I found the Crossroads Church. Big shout out to them. Loved that church. And that's kind of where I knew that I had something to give others. I wanted to help people with my experience. That if someone like me who had given up hope on their lives could find recovery on the other side of that coin, then that means that others could too. And, God has made that my mission. That's the gift that He has given me, not just with my recovery, but the ability to speak and to talk to others and share my experience. So, so I'm moving through life. And I forgot to say that I also had a prison term hanging over my head. I had gotten busted with 2 intent to distributes. Confidential informant had wired up on me, and I wanted to blame them for a long time. But in recovery, I learned that I was the one to blame because I was living that life. It wasn't their fault; it was my fault. So all of that stuff had been put on hold until I got back to Chanute, where I live, and started going back to court again. And by the glory of God, I didn't have to go to prison. They were offering me 32 months or something like that, 34 months. That was my plea deal. If I took it to court, I was going to go to prison for 10 years if I lost. But I get back, I go to court. I got a new lawyer, and the court-appointed lawyer, he got me corrections. So I did 18 months corrections, got off of that, breezed through that, like paid my fines off, did everything. I was kind of bouncing around there. Got back to Chanute, got through all that stuff, and just continued to upgrade my life. I worked in a kitchen for a little while. I went to a manufacturing place, went to a better manufacturing place. I met my wife in there. I have 2 children, older children of my own. My wife has 2 younger children. So together we have a family of 6. So I found recovery, right? I found freedom from that addiction. And the only way that I have found to do that for me is by helping others, giving back what was so freely given to me, attending, regular meeting attendance. I have a sponsor. I have sponsees that I work with regularly. And so where I am now is navigating life today, whatever that looks like, that I am, still in 12-step, that I'm a peer mentor in my job. I help other addicts. I also help people with, mental health disorders. I'm a member of my church. I play bass in the worship band. I am a deacon. I have a family. I still have struggles though. I still have struggles with anxiety. But early on in the marriage, like I had struggles with, what it was like to be a father and a husband, like a good one. I didn't know what that was like because I'd only ever been that in my active addiction. So I had to relearn all of those things. And so, I struggle with discipline sometimes. And discipline is a big part of my life. Exercise, running, I ran my first 50K this past December. I've run a couple of half marathons, and that's only been in the last 3 years that I started doing that. Excuse me. I struggle with food addiction. I'm a binge eater. I currently am on a Wegovy injection to help manage my food cravings. I struggle with migraines too. I take medication for that. I take a medication for my anxiety. So, that's why I want to do this podcast. Is I've got a lot, I think, to offer people. I know I'm not the only one. I can't be the only one that can benefit from these types of things, that can benefit from the things that I've gone through and the solutions that I've found. So I don't know, man. I think we got through it. Thanks for sticking around for my first episode, the Redeemed podcast. And again, I'm Charlie Harding. I'll try to put one of these out once a week. I think I'm going to do this format for a while, and then I'll go to like an interview format. But we'll just see if I can stay disciplined and dedicated to doing this, and see if I can't, help some people, reach some people, touch some people's lives. I'm sure there are people out there that can resonate with my story and some of the things that I've gone through. And as the next few episodes unfold, I'll touch more specifically about some of those certain things. It's probably going to go on YouTube. So like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Recovery and Strength, I think, or Strength and Recovery. Gosh, isn't that terrible? I can't remember off the top of my head. It's one of those two. But like and subscribe, and I'm going to try to put this out on Spotify as well. So thank y'all. I love y'all. Redeemed Podcast.